I'll get you, my pretty. This is a classic line we've all heard. And who does it come from? One of the most infamous witches in pop culture, the Wizard of Oz's Wicked Witch of the West. She fits every stereotype a witch should. She's green, cloaked in a long black robe, topped off with a black hat sharpened to a point. She rides around on a broomstick, and she even has the mixing cauldron back at her lair so she can cast spells on people. We think of the Wicked Witch of the West as the epitome of everything a witch should be, but in reality, what someone who is accused of witchcraft would look or behave like is nothing close to that.
As long as we have prejudice and bigotry and hatred, we're going to have witches. We're going to have people we scapegoat and then we turn into witches of one kind or another.
Contrary to popular belief, the origin of witch trials was not in Salem village in 1692. They were actually going on in Europe for a long time prior to that. Witch hunts in Europe first began in the late medieval time period, almost 300 years before those in Salem village. According to some historians, nearly 1 million women were charged with witchcraft over a period of roughly 250 years. Much like the trials at Salem, these European witch hunts have been unexplained and remains widely debated in historical studies. However, much of the reasoning behind European witch trials and hunts is often thought to be the demographics and social conditions in that specific place. One theory why the European witch craze was prevalent in the way it was that after the Black Plague of the early 1400s, women were starting to gain power and men, consequently, were losing some of their status in society. This aspect would be looking at the witch hunts in a gender-biased point of view. Another explanation for the witch hunts in Europe is that the ruling leaders did not like the reproduction of the working classes and that it was coming to a slow. To fix this problem, they burned supposed witches that would help abort children. Finally, once examined by historians, it was noted that all of the witch trials going on across Europe happened in societies with weakened or threatened political structures.
It's so easy for people to look outward for solutions to their problems and for people to blame rather than first kind of having a serious sort of look inward and saying, wow, to what degree might I have brought this on myself?
The Salem witch trials of 1692, much like their counterparts in Europe, have remained in a constant state of debate to historians and scientists alike. But what has not been challenged is the fact that these trials were an infringement on basic human rights. The trials were spurred by a few young girls, one the daughter and another the niece of the local minister Samuel Parris. These girls were gossiping about their futures, perfectly normal for girls of that age. All of a sudden, the girls started to have epileptic-like fits. When the good Reverend Samuel Parris had the girls examined by a doctor, he found nothing physically wrong with them. These problems had to be explained in some way, so it was deemed witchcraft. From here, the girls sought for a scapegoat, so they identified people they thought were outcasts in Salem village. The first one was a very obvious target, Parris' slave Tituba. After her, the accusations kept rolling in. The girls started to name more and more people, neighbors started to become leery of each other, and Salem's entire social structure was in chaos. Shortly thereafter, the hangings began. Innocent people were being accused of witchcraft, and the judicial system of Salem was doing little to help. Essentially, the judges acted as the jury, prosecuting attorney, and the judge all in one body.
Who are you looking to blame? Well, maybe we should blame the government for its failed policies. Oh, we're the government. Maybe we should blame our military leaders for failing to defend the colony. Oh, we are high-ranking military officers.
The accused had no legal representation whatsoever. Therefore, once accused, there was little you could do to clear your name and practically nothing you could do to get out of the ridiculous accusations. Nearly 150 people were accused in the trials. Many were able to flee before the judicial hammer struck down upon them. Yet others ended up dying in jail, and 19 ended up being executed, whilst one wizard, or a male witch, was pressed to death.
In the 17th century New England, everyone believed in witchcraft. Ministers, college presidents, the most devout believed in witches. So imagine this situation if you were living in 1692. We know that witches are real. We know that they can harm you, they can kill your family, they can destroy your home, They can destroy your crops. Their goal is to completely eliminate your government and to eliminate the church that you believe in. We should try to stop them. Great. How can we do that? We don't know what they look like. They could be anybody. They could be a neighbor. They could be your best friend. But we have to try to find them. So let's see. Maybe it's someone who looks a little different than you. Maybe it's someone who has an foreign accent. Maybe it's someone who seems to worship God a little different than you, or is not regular in their attendance upon Sabbath. Maybe it's someone who acts strangely. Well, I think the bottom line is, if you replace the word terrorist with witch, you'll understand exactly the problems that people faced in 1692.
Salem, then known as Naumkeag, was first settled in 1627 by a few families in search of more religious freedom than that of the strict colonies south of them in Cape Cod. Roger Conant, now recognized as the founder of Salem, led those families with him and established a small community. Shortly thereafter, John Endicott, along with English settlers and a new English rule that deemed him governor, arrived in Salem from England.
There were serious problems going on in the colony, and witchcraft was an easy explanation for that.
When the first girls became afflicted, they seemed it would be easiest to play it off these conditions and start to fabricate details and people involved. When people did get accused, they had to appear in court and tell the gruesome details of their black magic. The defendants had no attorney representing them and practically no chance of innocence. Once in court, they were essentially just proving their own guilt. In modern society, it is innocent until proven guilty. At the witch trials, it was just the inverse, and the judges turned their back on their responsibilities to uphold the law and remain as an unbiased judge. They went with the flow of society and refused people's natural rights for, if nothing else, their side of the story. One extreme measure they took to prove or disprove witchcraft was by tying a boulder to the feet of the accused and tossing her in the harbor. If she drowned, it was settled that she was a normal person. However, if she somehow managed to escape, she was most certainly a witch. You can imagine how well that strategy went over.
It really sort of seems that there's the atmosphere here that is very encouraging to sort of forcing people to confess.
From that, this quasi-legitimate government had no legal responsibilities to fully uphold any law or conform to the basic human needs and rights that are all granted. From all of these factors, the disarray that happened in Salem Village in 1692 was theoretically inevitable by some factors, but had a great chance of being avoided by others. The Salem witch trials of 1692 was the largest outbreak of supposed witchcraft in American history. It was also one of the first mass killings in the New World. From these horrific events that took place in a once quaint fishing community, there are many lessons that we can learn. Most importantly, it can be learned what a lack of government combined with a plethora of social issues can be a deadly combination for catastrophe. Moving forward, the U.S. and other nations will hopefully take steps to prevent such terrible occurrences from happening.
I'd like to think that at some point it would all make sense, but I don't know if that'll be in my lifetime or yours, which is what makes this thing also interesting.
These are our thoughts on what caused the Salem witch trials of 1692. But are they fact? Absolutely not. The world will never truly know what was behind the Salem witch trials of 1692.